The category is inventors, and here is the clue.
Catherine Littlefield Greene.
This is the Runners Up Club, a podcast about unsung heroes, lovable losers, and forgotten failures. For those with a few minutes to spend on those who spent theirs in a losing cause.
Hi folks, I'm Ray Gustinelli. Welcome to the show. Okay, here's the setup. You're on Jeopardy! The final category is inventors. You go all in because you feel pretty good about this category, and you need to catch up to Yogesh and Victoria, who are kind of kicking your butt in this game. Okay, after the break, Ken reads the clue. He says,
The National Inventors Hall of Fame said his work,
inventing the cotton gin, brought the South prosperity.
30 seconds, contestants. Good luck.
Well, you know the answer. You write it down. It's an easy one. Eli Whitney. You know this because you read chapter 22 in your American history textbook. Yogesh and Victoria surely know it too, so you're not going to win Jeopardy today, just FYI. I know it because I grew up 2 blocks off Whitney Avenue in southern Connecticut. Point being, Eli Whitney is considered to be the sole inventor of the cotton gin. It's in the textbooks, it's in the Jeopardy clues, real and imagined, but if the historical record were more complete, or if America's patent laws in 1783 were more enlightened, there's a pretty good chance that a woman named Catherine Littlefield Greene would be sharing the acclaim. Today's story is about that very impressive Revolutionary Era aristocrat whose name is not etched very deeply in the annals of history. Now, a caveat, particularly for any first-time listeners to the series out there, today's episode is a tale of a different sort from those I've told so far. It's not so much a runner-up in the sense of a person or product or thing bested by a rival, as it is an unrecognized contributor. These situations, and they are of course legion, are where one person gets all the credit for an innovation or an idea that in retrospect should have been shared. If the world were fair, that is, which it is decidedly not, it's just the way it works. They don't give fractional Nobel Prizes, and we like our inventors singular, and of course typically male. The myth of the lone genius is a hard one to dispel, but we're going to do our best today to do a little dispelling. On with it then. Let's start with a quick recap for those of you who skipped that chapter in your high school American history textbook, which, by the way, shame on you.
Bueller.
The cotton gin, which was short for engine, was a mechanical device that removed the seeds from balls of cotton fiber. Its importance as a technological innovation is often obscured by its sociological impact. It's credited, if that's the right word, with spurring the growth of slavery by making the production of cotton less labor-intensive and thus more profitable. This helped to transform the American South into an agricultural powerhouse, supplying most of the world's cotton by the time of the Civil War, and in the process institutionalizing the slave-based plantation system as the engine of the region's economic prosperity. Catherine Littlefield, also called Katie, was born into an aristocratic Rhode Island family in 1755. Her father served in the state legislature, her mother's forebears settled Block Island, her uncle William was a colonial-era justice and a governor of Rhode Island during the American Revolution. In 1774, Katie married a successful local merchant named Nathaniel Greene. She was 19. He was 33. Despite the age difference, or perhaps because of it, who knows, it was a good match and a loving union. Any shot at domestic bliss, however, was interrupted by the outbreak of revolution at Lexington and Concord just up the road. We'll fast forward through the war years. They are full of incident for sure, but not strictly on point for our purposes. Suffice to say that Greene ascended the military ranks from a leader in the Rhode Island militia to a trusted general in Washington's Southern Army. By the end of the war in 1783, Greene was a bona fide war hero, the second best general to Washington in the opinion of many peers and scholars. As an aside, that makes him a runner-up in his own right, in his own way. That's a tale for another time. Well, the couple, Nathaniel and Katie, were also, unfortunately, in considerable debt. The general had taken out loans to pay for supplies for the soldiers under his commission. When he petitioned Congress for help in repaying after the war, they refused on the basis of a technicality, something about not filling the right paperwork. Completely ridiculous. Well, as a consolation prize of sorts, the fledgling republic did find their way to gifting the Greenes some fairly large tracts of lands in the South in recognition of the general's distinguished service. With that, the Rhode Island aristocrats became Southern gentry. They settled on a plantation called Mulberry Grove near Savannah. It was not easy going, and they struggled. Within a year, Nathaniel was dead of sunstroke, and 31-year-old Catherine was left to run the place, find a way out of debt, and raise their 5 children, aged 3 to 10, without him. Now, Katie was made of stern stuff, and she rose to the challenge. She maintained close connections with Washington and others in the political establishment. She managed down the debt, and she turned the plantation around. In 1788, she brought on a tutor to her kids named Phineas Miller, who soon thereafter became her plantation manager. A few years after that, she met a young Yale graduate on a steamship from the Northeast to South Carolina. Let's envision this historic moment. Greene meeting Whitney, she staring over the steamship rail. He approaches. They get into conversation. She's 37 now, mother of 5, a distinguished war veteran, in her way, who'd spent a winter in Valley Forge with Washington and her husband, was close friends with Hamilton, Lafayette, and many of the whole founder gang. He's 27, smart, mechanically minded, with a successful nail forge business behind him, but still quite green in the ways of the world. He's a bit starstruck, to be honest. He says he's in search of a tutor job in South Carolina. "South Carolina, dear boy," says Catherine. "Georgia is where the action is. You shall come to Mulberry Grove." Catherine sets Whitney up with a workshop, and he becomes the Greene children's tutor and a handyman about the plantation. He's a natural problem solver, this Whitney, and Katie tees him up to address the most vexing one in the post-Revolution era South. Growing cotton was easy in the loamy soil of Georgia, but processing it was so labor-intensive as to make it by the late 1700s a dying crop in America, if you can believe that. Picking the seeds from a day's harvest of cotton from the fields might take 3 weeks. The math just doesn't add up. In a fairly short amount of time in 1794, some early accounts put it at days, but it was actually a few months, Whitney invented the gin. It was a simple device, easy to replicate, and an instant success. With Catherine's backing, Whitney went into business with Katie's plantation manager Phineas Miller to capitalize on the gin. Well, their first business model, which was a services model, involved charging plantation owners a fee for cleaning cotton. This was met with cries of outrage from the southern landowners. That idea of paying for the use of a thing just wasn't so well established, and of course these guys were used to getting labor essentially for free. Well, the threesome, Greene, Whitney, and Miller, pivoted then to a product model where they manufactured and sold cotton gins. But it was too late. They couldn't keep up with demand, and they struggled to enforce the patent that would keep others off the market. They were out of business by 1797. Now, the fuzziness of the historical record makes it impossible to know the precise role Greene played in the invention of the gin. It's generally agreed that she was instrumental in introducing the northerner Whitney to the difficulties of raising green seed, or short staple cotton, and that she encouraged him to develop a solution. By many accounts, she also suggested the original design and was responsible for a couple of critical features without which the project would surely have failed. Let's drill into that. At the heart of the cotton gin's design are 2 rotating cylinders. The first contains a set of teeth that drag the cotton fibers through a fine mesh, which is too narrow for the seeds to pass through. The second cylinder brushes the clean lint off the first cylinder where it would otherwise clog. Whitney's original design employed wooden teeth on that first cylinder, and it just wasn't working. He was despondent, on the verge of abandoning the project. Greene suggested using wire instead of wooden teeth. Bingo.
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 As to Greene's second invention, we'll let her daughter Cornelia tell the tale, as quoted by Cornelia's granddaughter Martha Littlefield Phillips in the Century magazine, volume 55 from 1897.
One morning he, Whitney, descended headlong into the drawing room, where a number of guests were assembled and excitedly exclaimed, "The victory is mine." In deep sympathy with him, the guests and hostess went with him to his workshop. Whitney set his model in motion. For a few moments, the miniature saws revolved without hindrance, and the separation of the seed from the cotton wool was successfully accomplished. But after a little, the saws clogged with lint, the wheel stopped, and poor Whitney was in despair. "Here's what you need," exclaimed my mother in her clear, decisive way, and she instantly seized a clothes brush lying on the mantel and held it firmly to the teeth of the saws. Again, the drum revolved, and instantly the saws were cleaned of the lint, and the last requirement of the great invention was satisfied. "Madam," said Whitney, overcome with emotion and speaking with the exaggeration of gratitude, "you have perfected my invention."
Okay, so let's recap. With her children's welfare in mind, a battle-tested matriarch entices an intelligent but somewhat adrift young Yale postgrad to come south. She sets him up in a workshop, outlines the problem at hand, and provides key, decisive insights at critical points in the invention process. She sponsors the whole operation from inception to early usable product. Let's go back to that patent. It's where the trio of Whitney, Miller, and Greene fell short in business, and it's also what has enshrined Whitney's name, and his alone, in the annals of history. These were the early days of U.S. patent law. The first patent was issued in 1790 to Samuel Hopkins for potash production, if you must know. And only 70 more were issued to historically inconsequential ideas over the next 4 years before the gins was granted in 1794. Women were not allowed to hold patents at the time. In theory, Greene may have pushed the issue, insisted on recognition, but there would have been social stigma attached to that. Ambitions toward invention and industry were unbecoming a woman in many people's eyes, particularly one of high social standing. Absent those barriers, both fundamentally social constructs, it seems quite probable that Whitney would have included Catherine on the application, and her name would have passed down in history as a co-inventor of the cotton gin. Well, where are they now? Eli Whitney's achievements are taught to all school children. If you read the right chapters in your history textbooks, he's generally considered the most important American inventor behind Thomas Edison and Alex G. Bell. Buildings, schools, and at least one lake bear his name. A museum dedicated to his achievements is located on the aforementioned Whitney Avenue in Hamden, Connecticut. It's as the wife of the war hero Nathaniel Greene and mother to his 5 heirs that Catherine Littlefield Greene has traditionally been remembered. Fortunately, there's also an increasing degree of historical analysis that recognizes the richness of her life and her prominent role in the invention of the gin. Some even frame her as an early scientist in her own right. In an 1870 pamphlet titled Woman as Inventor, the feminist advocate Matilda Joslyn Gage unambiguously credited Greene with the invention of the cotton gin. Now, that may be a bit of a stretch, it's far from the common consensus today, but here at the Runners Up Club, we commend that perspective, as we do all efforts to render on the long dusty rolls of history the name Catherine Littlefield Greene in much bolder type.
This podcast is created, written, and performed by Ray Agustinelli, and produced by, with original music by, Bad Hat Media. Find more at runnersupclub.com. Until next time, keep running.
Bueller.